Her accolades go way beyond our time. I could spend her entire time just talking about the great things she does, not only that she has done here, but in the community of Lexington. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Nancy.
Thank you, Jim. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. My roots to Campbellsville University, it was college when I went here, go way back. In fact, I was literally born on this campus. It was a hospital then. I think it's a music center now. I walked onto this campus for my very first college classes many years ago. Didn't finish my degree here. I ended up at Western Kentucky where I got my journalism experience. But Campbellsville University has always been very close to my heart. So it was an honor to be called to speak to you. However, it was a little daunting, too, because when I come home to Campbellsville, I still feel like that 18-year-old kid who walked on this campus, because people here really know me, so it's a little bit different. I do have a unique job. It's a special job because it's my dream job. I think it was 5th grade in a career fair that I first decided I wanted to be a broadcaster. So I've been truly blessed to be living my dream job. It's a strange job. I have odd hours. I'm normally not very alert this time of day. I go into work at 2:30 in the afternoon and I get home at midnight. Well, I also have a family. So I then get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get them off to school. So I'm not great at math, but I know that's not many hours left in there for sleep. It also takes a toll on my family in other ways. If there's a big event happening, if there's a tornado bearing down on Lexington and I'm telling people to go home and get their children and get to safety, that's when I leave my children with someone else and I go broadcast to the public. So there are a lot of demands and stresses on this job. There's no question about that. But one of the weirdest things about it is how people view me. They think they know me and have me sized up just because they see me on TV every night. A lot of people think I'm a celebrity. I don't think that, but a lot of people see that. They don't see much difference in me and all the other maybe news people on a national level out there. When my son was just a little guy sitting in the car seat in the grocery basket one day, I'm going through Kroger and being frazzled and trying to finish my list. And I go down one aisle and this woman just stops dead in her tracks and stares at me. And I'm like, what's going on? And she said, "You grocery shop?" I'm like, "Yes, I do. And if you want to follow me to the car in a minute, I'm going to change a very dirty diaper." So yeah, I do all those things, and people just think I make $1 million and have servants and all that kinds of things. That's not true at all. On the other end of the spectrum, people think they know me, and I'm one of those liberal media who is opinionated and tries to force through their agenda. And I'm like, look, I'm reporting on car wrecks and scams about the elderly. I'm not interviewing world leaders and putting my own opinions in there. In the 2012 presidential election, we were covering it, of course, that night. We were on the air all evening. And I wear red every election day since I've been in the news business. To me, that's patriotic. I might put a little flag pin with it, but I usually wear red or blue or some combination. Well, this man called my news director and demanded that I be fired immediately because clearly I was a Republican. That same day, I'd gotten an email from a man truly upset at me because of something I said, because clearly I was a Democrat. So you can't win for losing, right? So some people see me as this special celebrity. Others see me as this scumbag media person. And neither's really true. I think I'm somewhere in the middle there. People give me way too much credit or they tear me down way too much. What my career has allowed me to do, though, is observe people from all walks of life, from all kinds of backgrounds, with all kinds of hopes and dreams. And it's very interesting to see how these different people have so many similarities. For instance, if they're on the news, it's probably not for a good thing, right? I think of the former Kentucky basketball star who's now sitting in prison for misusing taxpayer money. His jersey's hanging in Rupp Arena right now, and he's in jail. Or I think of the son of a former governor who grew up almost being royalty in Kentucky. And he himself made a run at governor and made some noise. And now he's sitting in prison for murdering his fiancée. But then we have women who grew up on welfare and abused their kids and hooked on drugs, and they're in prison right now. We have men who maybe had no role model at home and instead found their identity on the streets with a gang member, and they're sitting in prison right now. People with very different backgrounds who ended up literally in the same place. How did that happen? See, failure knows no socioeconomic labels. It knows no race or background. Doesn't matter who you are, you can fail. Why do we fail? It obviously isn't necessarily because of how you were raised, your background, or how much money you have. I believe it's because of what's in your heart. Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for it is a wellspring of life. That's an image that strikes very clear to me because I remember going to the spring when I was a little kid and getting that fresh water that was just pristine and pure and tasted so good. And we preferred that over city water. And we'd go to the spring and it was just gushing out of the rocks, a wellspring. Well, that's what happens with what's in our heart. It gushes out of us. Your heart is truly the most important leadership tool you have. You can go to seminars and they talk about perseverance, determination, but it really begins with what's in your heart. Please raise your hand for me if you've ever been disappointed by someone. Me too. Now I want you to raise your hand if you've ever disappointed someone. All the same people who raised their hand the first time pretty much raised their hand the second time. I've got news for you. It's part of the human condition. Failing others, it's part of the human condition. But part of any kind of character development or servant leadership begins with that. Yeah, people have disappointed me, probably even in the last 24 hours. But yeah, I've disappointed people probably within the last 24 hours. That's called humility. When we have humility in our heart, we're looking outward. We're looking at what can I do for somebody else today? Am I treating that person fairly? Am I treating that person the way I want to be treated? The opposite is pride. And that's when we walk around saying, man, that person wronged me. That wasn't fair to me. They didn't treat me right. That's pride. Whether we have become the kind of leadership with humility or pride truly goes back to what's springing out of your heart. Leadership and character to me they're not things you attain. You can't go to a conference and write down the 10 qualities of leadership. To me, leadership or character is either a symptom of a sickness in your heart, or it is a residue of righteousness. Another thing that makes my life a little unique in the TV world is that I'm married to a man who has the exact same job I do. In fact, we're competitors. He works for the ABC station and I work for the NBC station. His name is Tom Kenny, and broadcasting was not his dream job at first. His dream job was a career in the NBA, like a lot of little boys, right? Only he had the talent to potentially make it come true. As a junior in high school, he couldn't count the number of recruiting letters he was getting. And this was the day before the internet, you know, when you couldn't just Google somebody and print off a form letter and send it to that address. People actually had to sit down and type out these letters and sign them and find Tom Kenny's address and send it to him. The letters he was most excited about were from Indiana University and a coach called Bobby Knight. Hear of him? He's now a commentator, but at that time, 1978 or so, he had just come off a national championship a few years before. And any kid in the Midwest who got recruited by Bobby Knight, you knew you had a chance to go to the NBA. Unfortunately, in the summer before his senior year, though, my husband blew out a knee. Happens a lot. You've probably had friends. Maybe you've had an injury that changed your course in athletics. So the letters stopped coming. The phone calls completely stopped. And Tom was able to finish out his senior year playing basketball, but he wasn't scoring the 30, 40 points a game like he had before. But one night, he did get a call from a coach, and it was Bobby Knight. And he called to tell him, hey, I'm sorry for what's happened to you, but this isn't the end of your dreams or your career. Be a good citizen, get your education, and turn this thing around. Yeah, we hear a lot of bad things about Bobby Knight, and I'm not saying he is an example of a servant leader or the person you should emulate, but I'm saying that act of kindness was looking outward from yourself and being a leader. He didn't have to call him. He had a list of other kids' names on his desk that would fill that position. It was no problem. But he did it because he looked outward and not just within himself. It is so great to see so many women athletes in here today. When I was at Campbellsville College, I think there were 2 sports for women. Basketball, they were good even then. And I think we determined maybe tennis was available here. And now I'm hearing you have soccer, obviously. The women's soccer team doing great. Swimming, what else? Wrestling, yeah. Bowling, I believe. Bass fishing, and lots of more plans for other sports coming down that women can be a part of, and that's great. You have so many opportunities, and I think that is wonderful. But it comes with pressure, though, right? You have more opportunities in business and in education and so many other avenues, but then you still have the pressure of the stereotypes that you're expected to live up to. Women are expected to be Martha Stewart, Mia Hamm, and Taylor Swift, or whoever else you guys think are pretty and sexy. I'm probably way off my mark on there, but you get what I mean. You're expected to be it all. And men, you're not immune from that pressure either, right? You're athletes, you're students, you're almost independent adults, but not yet. And you have all that pressure to succeed on the field or on the court, to succeed in class, to be strong, to be the kind of husband or boyfriend that the world tells you you have to be. And you have more pressure at home. With women being much more involved in opportunities. Guess who's picking up the slack? I know more men now who are changing the diapers and fixing the bottles. So you have a lot more on your plate as well. And I've got news for you. It doesn't get easier. Just to come down here this weekend, I had to plan for my children and make sure the sitters and the husband and everyone was all on the same page just so I could get out of town for a couple of days. The world is going to tell you that through all that, you have to be strong. You have to forcefully take hold of your life and your situation. But Jesus said, you have to be a servant to be a leader. Whoever would be great among you must be your servant. Whoever would be first among you must be a slave. You know, in the world's eyes, I really shouldn't be standing in front of you today. I grew up way out in the country here in Taylor County, one of 10 children. When I walked on campus here, I was part of the first generation in my family to go to college. I was part of the first generation of my family to graduate high school. My parents married early, because that's what you do, and started having children to help them on the farm. My father eventually got his GED, but he didn't finish school. My mother didn't finish school. They worked so hard. I think my father raised his first crop and sold it at the age of 16, all by himself. So I didn't have a lot of the opportunities and advantages that a lot of my peers did. I had to work very hard. I had to put myself through school. And it would have been perfectly understandable had I never graduated college and certainly never gotten a job where I'm on TV. And I end up covering presidential elections, sitting down one-on-one with people like Hillary Clinton and interviewing her, traveling to Washington for the presidential inauguration, covering 14 Kentucky Derbies so close I could almost reach out and touch the horses. I shouldn't have done all that. I didn't have the background or the support to do that at all. But I'll tell you what I did have. And I'll tell you through describing a typical Sunday morning at my mom and dad's house. 10 kids to get ready for church, okay? My mother got up and made homemade biscuits and gravy and eggs and the whole 9 yards for 12 people. She then proceeded to make lunch so it would be ready when we got home for all 12 people and probably the pastor too and his family. She got us all dressed and hair combed and faces washed and teeth brushed and 20 little feet with shoes and socks on them. And she got us all to church early every Sunday. Well, I'm lucky if I get myself and my 2 kids there on time, so I'm pretty impressed by that. But the whole time that my mom was this little hurricane running around in the kitchen trying to do all this, you know what my dad was doing? He was in the living room, sitting in a straight back wooden chair, leaned back on 2 legs, strumming his guitar and singing. When I got a little older, I was like, why didn't my mother just walk in and whack him on the top of the head and say, get up and help me get these kids ready? But see, he was singing songs like, Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Or going up home to live in green pastures, where we shall live and die nevermore. You know, I don't remember a single word from those sermons when I was that little kid on that pew every Sunday morning. But I remember every word of those songs. And my mom knew that. She knew that as Daddy was singing and practicing, he was teaching us about Jesus. That was the first place I heard about Jesus, and it stuck. She was so wise. She was so willing to be the servant, and therefore was being the true leader in that home. And she did that because of what was in her heart. So when you leave here today, I hope you leave wanting to be a leader. I know your mentors here. Hope you leave this university wanting to be a leader. I hope you graduate with aspirations and goals. But don't leave without considering what's in your heart and what it's going to look like when your wellspring gushes forth. Thank you.